It's now time for Season 3 of the Boomtown Pod, your home for all combat sports. Breaking down everything from the UFC, Bellator, and PFL, all the way to boxing. This is your home for everything combat. Join your hosts, Andrew Kahn and Cole Smith, as they break down all the latest news, signings, and fight cards so you never miss a beat. This podcast sponsored by RKP Roofing in Regina. For all your roofing requirements, reach out to Randall and the crew for the ultimate roof and home experience. 306-580-9849. This podcast sponsored by FKN Beer, the funniest beer out there without a doubt. Delicious FKN Ale, and now the brand new Boom Lagers in store now. Grab yours off the shelf today and enjoy the best Canadian beer. Show the world your hustle with premium quality Rest When Dead apparel, designed for an aesthetic look. Visit them today at restwhendead.ca. Sandman Boxing System and Blue Collar Media Group, partners and sponsors since day one. Now, here's your hosts, Andrew Kahn and Cole Smith. Season 3 is live now.
Really fired up when I hear Don Andrews, the voice of Palace Athena's Women's Fighting Championship, also the BC Lions, also the Vancouver Whitecaps, giving us that little intro. Man, it's been forever. How the hell are you guys doing? It's the Boomtown Pod, Season 3, Episode 11. Holy hell, we've been busy, and there's for good reason. I know I posted it on our socials that there was a good reason for that. My guy over here is officially a father.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we had to take a little time away. We got a little busy. My boy was, like I said, becoming a dad. Congratulations on that, by the way. Fill the people in. How is our newest member of the podcast crew?
It's good, man. It's been awesome. Royce is his name. Super cool guy, man. He's super chill, sleeps a lot. It's awesome.
Does dad get to sleep a lot? That's the important question.
Honestly, we both do. He like eats and then sleeps for like 2 to 4 hours. And then he's up for like maybe an hour and then sleeping again. So it hasn't been so bad. I've really not had to change my schedule a whole lot. So it's been good.
I've got a Royce to 5'9" sleeper that's coming that boy's way, and I cannot wait for him to rock it. Anyways, of course, guys, we've been blessed this year. Speaking of things that have been blessing us, we've got sponsors this year for our podcast, which has made things incredibly amazing for us this year. Of course, we want to give a shout out to, of course, FKN Ale. Make sure to go to FKN anywhere in liquor stores at Sobeys in Saskatchewan, White City at the Ice House, which is awesome. Of course, little FKN Ale for the cell phone cover there. Of course, you can get FKN Booms, a big hit with a lot of my friends, which is awesome. Make sure to try yours today. RKP Roofing, not a better company in Regina. Go check the reviews. It's all up there for you to check out. Those guys, Randall and the crew, are absolutely amazing. And I believe that if you're a roofer right now and looking to maybe work throughout the summer. If you're a college student, maybe you want to make some extra money. Randall's looking for some peeps. Check him out. RKP Roofing on Facebook. I know he'll be happy about that plug for sure, because it's hard to find good work these days. So if you're somebody who's a blue-collar folk like us, then hey, that wraps in perfectly, because we are part of the Blue Collar Media Group. Of course, they are the original ones. Same with our guy over there, Cole Smith and Sandman Boxing System. Check them out on all social media platforms today. And if you're in the Saskatoon area, hit my guy up. Get a training session in, and you will not be disappointed. I'll never forget the day he made me puke. I realized that I need to get in shape, and ever since then, I have been on my own, my own redemption story, if you will. 140 pounds down later. So we're doing big things out here. And also, of course, hey, check it. The hat, Rest When Dead apparel. restwhendead.ca. Check them out. You can actually go onto our YouTube page. We actually did a little bit of a workout session commercial with them. Those guys are amazing, man. Aaron's been so great to us. At restwhendead.ca. Check them out. They've been signing bodybuilders like crazy. Some of the biggest names in the bodybuilding world are actually joining a little gym from Moose Jaw. Pretty incredible, their story. Reach out to Aaron. He'd love to tell you someday. Of course, restwhendead.ca. All right. That's why you guys are tuned in. Let's get into the subjects. It wasn't the week that was. It wasn't the 2 weeks that were. It wasn't the 3. This is the month that was because we missed you guys so much. Of course, sponsored by FKN Ale and FKN Boom. Well, UFC 289 went down. Of course, they're calling this one the UFC is back in Canada card. The fights were good. Bit of a lackluster card as we kind of dove into about a month ago when they announced that this was all coming into fruition. The fights were good. Very, very good. Very strong card. Just kind of missing the superstars, if you will. But the UFC might have found one in Michael Malott. Now, there's been a lot of comparisons to a lot of name drops to one GSP. Does Canada finally have their next GSP? And let's fucking back that up a little bit because that is an extremely bold claim for a name that is obviously one of the best to ever do it. Still, probably one of the greatest. He's on the Mount Rushmore of the UFC. Does Michael Malott to you have what it takes to be in that upper echelon caliber of a GSP?
Not right now. I mean, it's hard to say. But like, he hasn't done much yet.
Amazing knockout. Amazing
Yeah,
performance.
100%. And he's really good. He is. Yeah. He is really, really good. Really exciting. And I think he's going to be he's going to be the new guy from Canada, I think, which is exciting. But let's just leave it at that.
I mean, we haven't really, if you think about it, we really haven't had a big name Canadian fighter that really took over since Mark Hominick. Like that might be the last. I mean, obviously GSP in that timeline as well. There was your Sam Stouts, right, who made some names.
And
Rory as well. Rory McDonald for sure being in there. Kind of a controversial end to his career in the UFC. So it's kind of like we've been budding for a big name, and Michael Malott definitely gives you the tools in the shed to definitely be able to give you that superstar reputation. A huge knockout over the weekend. I had some friends that texted me while they were there. They're like, absolutely electric performance from him, which got the crowd going. That's what you want in Canadian. And shout out to all our Canadians. Undefeated on the card, 6-0. Oh, Canada. Absolutely. That O means we were perfect. 6-0. So absolutely love it. It was good for the recognition. I feel like, again, the fights, the matchups, they weren't intriguing until pretty much a co-main event. And that's what we're going to break down right now. Charles Oliveira taking on Beneil Dariush. And this, for me, was a very big fight for Beneil, just because I think Dariush has been on the streak of killers. He's killed everybody lately. And let's not discredit what Charles Oliveira has done in this lightweight division. He's been a monster. And that continued from the outset of that opening bell, man. It was just all Charles Oliveira all the time. He was back being himself, that lengthy, weird guy who loves to throw combinations, kind of kept his chin in the air a couple times, a little scary with Beneil Dariush's power and his ability to land and sleep people. But Charles Oliveira, ladies and gentlemen, in my eyes, the number one contender yet again in the lightweight division.
Yeah, and I thought right away when he got taken down, I thought that was it. I thought like this round's over. Is what I thought. I thought Dariush was just going to keep him down, but he got back up and man, he's the man. That was super surprising to me. I did not think he was winning that, honestly, but it was awesome. I was actually happy to see it. It was exciting.
I mean, Charles Oliveira, when he connects, like you can ask Michael Chandler, who's done previous interviews talking about the power that Chandler has, obviously being knocked out by DeBronx. Sorry. It's kind of crazy to think that, like, if Charles, it's so, for me, he's such an underrated and underappreciated fighter. Obviously, the Canadian crowd loved him because when he got the finish, people went nuts. At media day, people were going nuts. I mean, but in that card, he is the name, right? Like, that's the name I think a lot of people went to go to Vancouver to watch that fight for, was Charles Oliveira. And it's funny because if you recall back right before COVID, I mean, we're going back to Saskatoon Fight Nights. We're watching him perform.
Yeah.
And loses a crap finish because of his arm. And ever since then, ever since that fight that we watch, it's like he's completely turned his career 180 and he's a completely revamped guy.
Yeah, honestly, whoever his stand-up coach is doing amazing, because that's where he's shining. That's where he's outperforming people. He isn't taking people down. He's dropping them and then mounting them and then getting their back after dropping them, after rocking them. He's not shooting. He's not, like, it's happening. Obviously there's scrambles, but like, he's standing up until they fall down, and then he's getting on top of them and choking them out, or doing what he needs to do, or knocking them out. And that's exciting. Ever since his stand-up game went through the roof, now he's a monster. It's crazy.
Simply put, he's the number one contender in that division. I don't care who you match him up against. I mean, honestly, Islam was pretty upset. He took over to social media today and was like, I was really hoping that Dariush would be the winner because I think he gives me a better challenge. And maybe rightfully so. I just think Dariush looked off. After that takedown, like, Oliveira got up quick. And I was like, that's not typical Dariush, because Dariush, like I said, is a pretty complete package when it comes to being a mixed martial artist. And it was kind of surprising to see the Bronx get up as kind of easy as he did. And Dariush, like you said, whoever his striking coach is for the Bronx, they've been working. They knew what to expect going into this fight. And they've been working on guys who've been standing and banging with Charles Oliveira for a long time now. So the fact that they've made him more aware and made him a much better, stronger fighter, like you alluded to, is huge for him. And I think, honestly, if he gets Islam again, it could be different this time. Like, and maybe, Islam is a different monster all in itself. But I think the rematch, now that I've seen a little bit more of the tools and Oliveira has sharpened up some of his skills, I like that matchup again. What do you think? Are you okay with that right off the get-go? Because it's only been one fight.
I think it's the fight that needs to happen, but I mean, like, how easy Dariush took him down, though. I don't. It's going to be a different story in that title fight. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be the same. I think he's going to get him down and do whatever he wants to him.
Yeah, man, Dagestani wrestlers, dude, they're for real. I mean, you say what? There's so many people that hate on them, and I just can't. You got to respect, you got to appreciate what they're doing, because it's insane how elite and high level, ever since Habib kind of took the forefront of this. You look at any organization, whether it be PFL, Bellator, whether it be, the UFC, any name, Murgamedov or Ankanov or any of those Anovs at the end of it, they're dominating the sport of MMA. And it's crazy to watch how dominant they are. And we'll get into it with another name of Vadim Nemkov coming up. But I mean, that's just, it's crazy to see the progression that they have made throughout the years. Now, I agree with you. Does Charles Oliveira probably struggle against Islam again on a takedown? Likely. Very, very likely. And again, I agree with you. When Dariush took that takedown, I was like, ooh, that looked way too easy. And that concerned me. That was probably the only red flag I had for Oliveira in that entire fight. And then he just poured it on. So fantastic finish for him in the co-main event. And then we get into the main event, which kind of was a weird one, because initially it was supposed to be Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena. Juliana Pena gets hurt, but is there in the crowd. Juliana Pena is voicing her opinion on Amanda Nunes pretty much the entire fight, and it was annoying as hell. And so,
yeah, very, very, very annoying.
Here's what I can tell you. Amanda Nunes is the GOAT. She is going to go down as the greatest women's champion of all time. People have fought me on this all month, all week. I don't care, all year. You listen and look at the names that Amanda Nunes has beaten, not one division, but two divisions, and has retained her strap during the entire time, losing it only once, and then winning it back immediately, is insane. So she takes on Irene Aldana. And it's not Aldana's fault that she got thrown into this matchup. I think with a little bit more time, she's probably a little bit more consistent, probably has a better fight and a better outcome against Amanda Nunes. But when you're facing the caliber that is Amanda Nunes, you have to. I mean, honestly, I think if Aldana had, a name, or not a name, if she had a couple of months, right? Like if she got the full camp that Pena got, I think she would have done okay. But Amanda Nunes makes a surprise announcement. She wins the fight. She lays down her gloves. That is it. She was retiring no matter what, which caught a lot of people by surprise, because I know that Amanda has alluded to retirement because now that she and her wife, they have their baby and everything's going on in that world. And I think she wanted to step away as being the greatest of all time. And I think after that loss to Pena, she knew that she had to come back and win. There was no other easy way out. She wasn't going to take that loss, retire, and call it a day. That's just not how she's ever operated, So now she retires. She lays 2 belts down. Now this division, both divisions, are blown wide open. I'll throw you some scenarios. Does Chris Cyborg come back to the UFC at 145?
I mean, I don't know. How's the relationship with Dana?
I guess that's $1 million question, right? Because you need a name and you need a face. Chris Cyborg immediately does that again. But
yeah, it's tough to look at that. It's tough to look at that division and there's not really any star power. It's hard. It's hard when like Nunes pretty much did what Anderson Silva did, right? They made that whole division look bad.
True.
And now that division looks bad because not only did Nunes beat everyone, she beat everyone twice.
Fact.
And it's so like, what do you do when someone retires on top and now you have all these people who got their asses kicked to the person who retired on top fighting for the belt? It's tough. It's a hard sell, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and this is going to be like the toughest thing that Dana White has to kind of obstacle himself through is how do you promote 2 divisions now? Like 135, I think you're going to be okay. There's still names there. There's still people in that division. 145, you got Juliana Pena, really, honestly. And then you've got Holly, who's kind of on I don't want to say a decline. She's a sweetheart. She's a great person, but she's also not what she was 8 years ago when she knocked out Ronda, right? Like that's a different tier, a different caliber fighter. The other thing too, I know I mentioned Cyborg's name, and I only do it because of relevancy of how big of a name she is and how much star power she still has. But Bellator has treated her so well.
Yeah.
My only issue though with the Bellator situation, and we've heard rumblings of it this week, is that Scott Coker has admitted that PFL might be interested in buying Bellator. So what does that mean for Chris? Like, if that shuffle happens, it's kind of weird, So I'm like, I mean, she could go to the UFC and be the star again because let's face it, the 145-pound division was built for Chris Cyborg when she left Invicta. That was the division that was meant for her, right? You had her and what was her name? They fought.
Oh, Durandamy. Jermaine Durandamy.
Durandamy. Yes. And those were the 2 names at 145 that made a lot of sense. Then Holly Holm went into 145, and I'm like, okay, there's some attraction there, right? But Chris Cyborg, when she was fighting at 145, was fighting the likes of Leslie Smith, and that's not not a knock to Leslie Smith, who's a former number 1 contender, if you will, but it's just not the caliber that a Cyborg should be fighting. So there's a lot of intriguing and a lot of weird questions that are going to be asked about that 145-pound division, especially in the females, man. 135, like I said, will play itself out. 125 strong as hell. That division is strong as hell. Shevchenko's already talking about moving back up to 135, which is probably the right move. Like, I think she could give up the strap at 125 to anybody that's down there, whether it be Thug Rose or whoever you want at 125. If she makes the jump up, she's already proven that she's the greatest at 125 ever. But if she moves up to 135, it could be even crazier to watch. So I do hope in that situation you kind of see that outcome, but there's lots to determine when it comes to that. Now, and the other aspect of things, obviously Amanda Nunes is going to go in and be a first-class Hall of Famer. There's no questions asked. Cole, to you, is anybody ever going to touch what she's done?
Oh man, that's a hard one. That's like, because I mean, like, not only did she, like, she's the only champ who held both titles and kept them, and she also beat the women who created the sport almost. Ronda Rousey and Chris Cyborg pretty much made women's MMA what it is, and she crushed both of them. So like, that's a tough one to beat. And just ending on top, most people don't end on top. So even if somebody did go on a run like her, like, ending on top is rare. So That's tough. And honestly, like how Pena is acting, like I think Nunes did win the trilogy because like Nunes doesn't even think about her, and she's like trying to make a career off of Nunes.
It's
So it's
sheepish.
like
It's very sheepish and very childish. Like
it's
everything that
funny.
she's been saying is like, oh, well, you just retired to go on top beating a scrub and not actually beating me. I'm like, well, the last time you guys fought, you got dominated. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't close. Like I understand that you want that trilogy fight more than anything, but at the end of the day, she absolutely owns you. So she doesn't owe you anything, Juliana Pena. And at the end of the day, I really do hope that she figures it out. And again, Juliana Pena could be the face of that division now that it's wide open. Like who knows what happens there? But I didn't agree with the antics. I don't agree with what she's saying. I'm a Juliana Pena fan. I think she's a great female fighter. I think she's great for the sport as well. But again, you just keep your mouth quiet. Like, and she's like, oh, I didn't appreciate her retirement that way. You don't get a say. Like, that's the GOAT, brother. Like, she's got her own world. She doesn't give a shit about you're on the island, to quote the WWE. She's on the island of irrelevancy. All right. So yeah, a little Roman Reigns shout out. Happy 1,000 days to that guy. But anyway, it's pretty crazy to think that, again, there's going to be new faces, and I can't wait to see what happens there. All right, Bellator 297. This was the hell yeah, but what the hell card. I enjoyed the hell out of this one. We had a really intriguing matchup in the strawweight division. We had, of course, Sergio Pettis, who's just been absolutely revitalized since leaving the UFC, going against one of the Pitbull brothers. I'll let you try to guess who because it's very tricky. But nonetheless, it was a great matchup. Stylistically, I thought this was the best division or the best matchup they could make in this division. Pitbull looked really, really thin going into the weight cut. That kind of concerned me right off the get-go. Sergio Pettis naturally probably floats around 140, 150, so it's not like it's a huge weight cut for him. He's very short. He's been doing this for a long time, retains the strap, and a very dominant performance. Sergio Pettis, man, do you think if he went back into the UFC right now and started to fight, some of these other guys again, do you think he'd do the same as he's doing right now?
Hard to say. I mean, like that's the first time Pitbull's ever been at 135. He fights at 145 or 155 from time to time. And you could tell that he's not meant there. He looked not great. He looked just a step behind. It's not like he looked terrible, but you could tell something was up. It was, yeah. I don't think that's the division for him. But I like not to take anything away from Sergio. He did look awesome. He was, and his boxing is good. He has really good boxing and crisp, and yeah. I think it would be tough though. Like that 135 division in the UFC is not. It's just a different level. I think that's a tough division in the UFC.
There's a murderer's row of people at 135. Even at 145, man, that division's crazy and taking off too. I mean, that might be the best division in the game. But
definitely,
Sergio Pettis, you can tell, has completely changed his whole persona around. Like he's completely evolutionized as a fighter. And again, I agree with you. Pitbull moving the weight cut from 135 down to 125. Golly, goddamn, dude. Like that was, he looked, again, at the weigh-in, I was like, oh, he's frail. He's very, very frail. And that scares me when a fighter loses that much because it tells me that they had a very hard weight cut to begin with. And then you go in there with the likes of a Sergio Pettis who this is his natural weight class. He's fine with the cut. He has no problems with it. I say what you will about the Pettis brothers. They never, Anthony was a different situation because he wasn't sure if he was a lightweight or if he was a welterweight, right? So he always got stuck in being that awkward, like, I probably walked around at 190, but then had to cut to 150. And you're like, bro, that can't be good for you. And then he would go to 170 and it would be tough for him to do that too. So at the end of the day, the Pettis brothers, continue to, assert their legacy, they assert their dominance, if you will, in the names of brothers, and it's crazy to watch the evolution of Sergio Pettis. I hope he's going to do big things for Bellator, whether it be the sale that happens with PFL. I think he's in the right place. Again, I know that I alluded to him maybe going to the UFC, but hey, man, you're making money. Things are good. You're the king of that division. You're the king of that corporation. And honestly, he's probably one of the biggest champions that organization has when it comes to selling cards or even selling name, right? So,
and those gold shorts were awesome.
They were so cool. I was also going to make a mention of that. Every champion should have gold shorts. That was fire, man. Like I've never seen anything like that. Obviously, we saw Bryce Mitchell in his like camouflage shorts, and those were pretty cool. But those gold championship shorts, I was like, yeah, I'm into this. I'm into this a lot. So hopefully they bring those back for his next fight. The main event, awesome matchup when I heard it. You and I dove into this about a month ago, and we said this is probably the outcome that was going to happen. Somebody check Yoel Romero for his CTE. I don't, on a personal level, on a very personal level, when you're barking and you have no bite, stop. Vadim Nemkov might be the best fighter in the world right now. And that I'm taking nothing away from any organization. He is hands down the best mover, the best boxer, and maybe arguably the best kickboxer in the game right now. There is nobody, I think, that can hold a candle to him, either UFC, PFL, or Bellator. And it showed. Yoel Romero has some of the heaviest hands ever in the sport. And he couldn't touch him. Nemkov dove, dipped, to quote dodgeball, really. Dive, duck, dick, and dodge. It's just insane how like his head movement was. It was insane to watch him load up that leg kick consistently and not be touched. Or when he wanted to punch Romero, it was easy as hell for Romero. Now, Romero is 42 years old. I'm not, and again, the head movement probably isn't in there as good as it used to be when we saw prime Yoel. My biggest concern is taking away from this fight is that I don't think Yoel Romero is okay. Like, and I mean that personally. I just don't think he's okay. He missed weigh-ins. He missed the ceremony. He was barking again. At the first time, it's funny. Ha, 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 whatever. And now that you continuously keep doing it, I'm like, there's something seriously wrong about this guy's mental health. And I think CTE, and I don't know if you noticed this, Cole, but in his last fight, he got punched so bad, his orbital bone broke, and it never healed. So now he's got like a drooped eye, and that's never going to recover. And I'm just like, Yoel, you don't owe us anything. Thank you for the memories, but he's kind of an average fighter. Like, if you look at his record, I know he got the title fight because he's a name. And no offense, if Rumble doesn't pass, Rumble's probably in that title fight, right? Like, let's face it, Rumble for sure doesn't pass away. He's definitely the number one contender. And does he beat Nemkov? Probably not. But we got Yoel Romero. What did you take away from this, man?
Man, I agree totally. There's something wrong with him. There's something not right. I don't know if he just like the star power got to his head, or he just wants to be this like crazy guy, or if it is like CTE,
Yeah.
But he's probably one of the best wrestlers to never wrestle.
Crazy. Jacare
It's
Souza.
like he went like 9 or 10-0. Ground and pounding people, and then now he's like trying to stand up with like just wrestle. I don't know what he was doing in that fight. He's just like doing like drunken boxing, but like getting his ass kicked the whole time.
I was gonna make mention of that too, because it was very like Anderson Silva like at one point. And I'm like, you understand. And the same thing with Silva. Like, Chris Weidman's no slouch. He's going to hit you, and it's going to hurt. So stop doing that. I mean, that's the same thing Yoel Romero was doing. I'm like, do you understand who you're in there with? He's a champ. And he's retained that title 6 times in that division. Like, Vadim Nemkov is, like I said, probably the best fighter in the world right now. And you're sitting there doing this. And, like, I'm like, I don't get it, Yoel. Like, I just don't think he's okay personally. I think there's some shit going on in his life. I think there's some CTE that's for real in there right now. And if I'm his coaches, his trainers, I get that he's a lovable guy. And maybe it's part of his charade and part of his act. But you barking just doesn't make any sense. You pretending to be drunk, like, you know what I mean? Like the boxing thing, I was like, man, you're fighting for the world championship. For $1 million, by the way. Should also mention that. Because that payout's nice. Not only do you actually win the championship, you get $1 million payday in Bellator. So what the hell are you doing? And I know Yoel probably made $400,000 to $500,000, and sure he came up $500,000 short. But again, there's sometimes when you watch fighters that you're just like, this has to be it for you. Like this has to be it. We saw it. You and I talked about it with Nick Diaz's last fight against Robbie Lawler. I mean, Nick is one of the biggest names of all time, and he didn't even want to be in that fight. Robbie Lawler didn't want to fight him because he knew that the only reason why Nick was doing it, like you and I said, was for the money. You know, it's just like your favorite fighters growing up are starting to lose it, you know, and there's this new generation, this new era, and at some time in your life, you have to say, that's it. And I really hope for Yoel Romero at 43 years old, I stand corrected, I said 42, 43 years old, this is it. Because I can't watch him do this again. I can't watch another media day of him barking at people. I can't do it. And I feel bad because I know he was such a name. And like you said, when you're good at something, criticize GSP all you want. People say his fights were boring. Hey, guess what? I was in that percentage of people who said his fights were boring. But did he win every fight? Yeah. Could people not do what he did? A fact. No one could stand and do anything that he was doing, right? So if you're Yoel Romero and you're a great wrestler, why did you stop? You know, and that's always been my thing. I know we got the one knockout victory years ago, but like, why stop what you're good at? That's why GSP will always be elite. He wasn't going to stand and bang with Dan Hardy. That seemed pretty dumb at the time when Hardy was knocking everybody out. Hey, shit, Carlos Condit almost knocked him out with a leg kick, and guess what happened? GSP woke up and said, I'm not good at standing up with these kind of guys. I'm going to take him down. I'm going to beat the shit out of him, and I'm going to be controlling the rest of this fight. Josh Koscheck, another guy who was was amazing with his hands. Got taken down, couldn't do shit. You know, so why back away from something that you're so good at? It was just like, it's infuriating to me. Shout out to Justin right now saying, great show tonight. Congrats on the baby boy, Cole. We're all so excited for you, man.
Thank you.
Hey, Justin, thanks for tuning in every week, man. We really, really appreciate it. And obviously, you were a big fan. And welcome back to Saskatchewan. Happy to have you back. Nonetheless, let's get into segment 2 tonight. This is Into the Future and What's Going On. This is sponsored by Restwindead Clothing Apparel, restwindead.ca, and, of course, RKP Roofing. If you are a summer student looking for a position and you like roofing and you're okay with hot days and having some mums look at you without your shirt on, then RKP Roofing might be the job for you. Check them out. Randall and the crew are absolutely great. I love those guys, man. Let's get into it. UFC 290 coming up. Volkanovski taking on Yair Rodriguez. Interesting as hell matchup. Gonna be a fun one. Volkanovski's gonna run away with it. Tell me I'm wrong.
No. I think you're right. I think he's a hard man to vote against right now. So even though, you know, Rodriguez is the man as well. He's the man. But it's just hard to vote against Volkanovski. He's just like, he's got the pace. He's just like so well rounded. I don't see how, unless Rodriguez does some crazy stuff where he gets that knockout, you know. But I don't know. What do you think?
The thing that I know about Yair Rodriguez is that he's unlike anybody else in that division. He throws weird combinations. He's really strong. He's very, very weird, unorthodox, could basically be the way to describe it. His last knockout was insane. Like, it's just, he is so unpredictable that, I mean, Volkanovski might have a problem with his length because Yair is going to be the taller fighter in this again. And we just watched Volkanovski take on another tall fighter, and it didn't go his way with the reach, right? And Volkanovski has some heavy fucking hands. So if he has a hard time trying to get in, it's going to be a long night. I think that's the only thing that Yair is going to be able to do to stop him or win this, if I will play devil's advocate. But Volkanovski's wrestling is next level, and he will shoot the hell high heaven, and he's going to take him down, and he's going to make his life miserable like he has done with everybody else in that division, including Max Holloway twice. So I think Volkanovski wins this. I think it's going to be probably a 4th-round finish. Yair Rodriguez has a heart of a champion. He's there for a reason. He is the interim champion after, of course, Islam and Volkanovski fought. I, again, just think Volkanovski is pound for pound the best, probably second best fighter behind Nemkov in the world right now. And Islam obviously up there too. There's probably your 3 main guys in the world. But yeah, again, devil's advocate, Yair Rodriguez could throw a weird ass spinning elbow or an up elbow like he did on the last time and knock somebody out. You just don't know, because when he goes into full flight desperation mode, he throws some of the weirdest shit ever, and it lands. Yeah. It's like it connects, and you're like, how the fuck did he just win that fight? Like, oh my god, that like Josh Emmett, like he's out cold. Like, what the hell just happened? You know, like, and Josh Emmett was pretty good in that fight leading up to that. So it's crazy. I'm really, really, really excited about that fight. Also on UFC 290, we've got the return of Bo Nickel. I know that has a lot of people excited. He had a great performance in his last fight, lasting, I think, what was it, a minute 50?
Yeah, he's I think that's how most of his fights have gone. Hey, first round finish.
Quick. They have all been very, very quick. Obviously, Bo Nickel, a former NCAA two-time division champion, which is insane. Those are the likes of Brock Lesnar with those kind of titles. Daniel Cormier also being one of those. I know that the fans are hyped. He's going to be kicking off that card. I'm going to be watching Go Bo Nickel Go. I think they have a really good thing on their hands with this kid. He's not an idiot. He's pretty intelligent. He knows the sport. He likes the sport. He's never compared himself. The one thing I like about Bo Nickel is that he's never compared himself to anybody. Even though I had made a mention of NCAA two-time division champions, he doesn't compare himself to them ever. He's like, I'm me. I'm doing this. Even his interviews after it, because there's a lot of hype behind Bo Nickel. Like, people really know who he is. So I'm looking forward to his matchup. And then, of course, we got Dan Hooker taking on Jalen Turner. This one's going to be a fun one. This is just a fan's fight, honestly. I don't give a shit who wins. I really like both these guys. Dan Hooker and Jalen Turner are just, I think at this point, pretty much just fighting for contracts. Dan Hooker's been on a bit of a skid after an amazing 21 and early 22. It's just like he's fought in hard guys. You know, the Chandler knockout didn't help him at all. Especially being ranked number 5 at the time against a guy who hadn't been ranked in that division and got finished. And then, of course, he had some injuries and stuff like that afterwards. Jalen Turner, one of those guys that just no matter what, no matter who you put in front of him, he's going to compete. And, I mean, he did really well against Shemkov there and barely lost. Like, it was a great performance on his part. I thought he did a really good job of, you know, taking an undefeated fighter to the absolute brink. So who do you got in this matchup, Cole?
Oh man, I think Hooker will probably outpace him. His pace is good. I'm gonna give it to Hooker, I think.
Yeah, I'm rolling Hooker. I think it's a must win for him because honestly, if he loses this fight, he probably drops out of the top 10, which really hurts him in that aspect. And then I think he only has like 2 fights left on his UFC contract. So it's like, shit, what do you do with Dan Hooker? Again, huge name in that division, just kind of has lost that relevancy, if you will. And Jalen Turner, again, I don't think if he loses, he's going to be in trouble. I think they'll give him another, you know, top 15 guy if he does end up losing this fight. So it's, again, this is just a fighter's fight, right? This is a fun one where all us fans get to watch 2 guys throw down, and this will be a knockout, and I think it's going to be in the 3rd round. Kind of a later round knockout for sure, because these guys are going to feel each other out in that 1st round for sure. Just watching them and knowing them, I have a feeling. Anyways, we'll get into the other fight that's going to be, again, a fighter's fight. Probably a number 1 contender matchup, too, by all stretch of the imagination in that middleweight division. We've got Robert Whittaker taking on Mr. Duplessis, who thinks he's South African black, which is amazing. I think it's hilarious. Racism at the full front.
I don't think he said black.
He did. He said, I am with them in my tribe. And I'm like, that's a weird thing to say out loud. But nonetheless, this matchup will be lights out and electric. Robert Whittaker's had a bit of a layoff here for a little while. Duplessis coming off a victory over Darren Till. Darren Till obviously has ruptured. What was his ACL in that fight? Got taken down. I think it was his MCL and his ACL, and it's the 2nd time. So that's disheartening for Darren Till. But, I mean, Duplessis, man, he got rocked a couple times in that fight and just kept storming, man. This kid doesn't give up. He's got a heart of a warrior for sure. But Robert Whittaker is another issue, another problem, because Robert Whittaker's pace is unmatched. It's like unlike anybody else. And when he combos you, he combos the shit out of you. Your opinion, is this, for Robert Whittaker, for me, this is a make it or break it fight. You don't have any more opportunities after this because there is a plethora of guys coming for that title.
Yeah, I mean, but he's kind of in the position of Oliveira where he just beats everyone else.
True.
he just can't win the title, but everybody else he beats.
He won an interim championship, so I'll give him that at least. But and it's true. There's some guys that get to the Mount Everest, if you will, and you finally get that little smell of gold, and you're like, ooh, that smells good. I can do this. And believe me, there's a lot of us that believe that Robert Whittaker could be a champion. But guess what? Izzy's back, and that is your kryptonite. And that's going to suck for you. Like, I mean, if Piero would have kept the title, I would have said Whittaker probably beats him. Just because there's such a stylistic matchup difference. But now that Adesanya is back on top in that division, it's like, okay, well, Robert wins, then what? And Duplessis and Izzy are really good friends. So it's just like, it's a weird matchup. It's a number one contenders fight all day long. I will take Robert Whittaker. I'm probably going to go with the finish in the second round. I'm going early.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's gonna finish him.
And the Duplessis hype train can finally end, and I'm all about that at this point. It's not that I'm against him. I just think he's a boring fighter, and maybe again, you can criticize it all you want. I just don't think he brings anything to the sport. Like, if you tell me that Duplessis versus Adesanya is going to be a headlining card, does it sell? No, like, it doesn't scream sell to me. Whittaker, at least, is a name. He's earned that reputation. He's been that guy in that division for 8 years now. And it's just like, okay, I can get behind me watching that card. So maybe Duplessis shocks the world, knocks Whittaker out, and I'm backtracking my entire statement, right? So that's the one thing I love about the sport, the unpredictability. You never freaking know. And again, it comes down to a puncher's chance, right? So, and then in our co-main event, we have that 125-pound title we talked about. Brandon Moreno taking on Mr. Pantoja in this matchup. Brandon Moreno, man, probably one of my favorite fighters in the sport right now. Electric, has overcome so much adversity. Really, Mexico this year has just been on this pedestal for champions. It's insane what they've done out in Mexico, and I don't see him losing. I mean, he sent Davison Fierro back up to another division.
Yeah, he's the man. He's since the last time they fought, he's just not the same fighter. So I think he's gonna do it. He's and like you said, super likable, super fun to watch. He's a superstar, I think, and I think this is gonna be. I think it's gonna be one-sided, to be honest.
No, and I won't disagree with you. I think it's gonna be very completely one-sided. I'm not taking anything away to Pantoja, who's the number 2 ranked in that division. I just honestly think Gabriel Moreno or Brandon Moreno, sorry, Gabriel Moreno. That's baseball. Brandon Moreno is that much better. I've been watching a lot of sports this summer. Sorry. But nonetheless, I mean, I like the matchup. I think it's going to be an explosive fight. I think Brandon Moreno gets it done in the second round. His boxing, his in and out ability, his wrestling. I mean, Davison Fierro, for me, all intents and purposes, was the best 125er they ever had. And Brandon Moreno made him look like child's play, not once, but twice, and sent his ass up to 135. So
just like Moreno's he must have such a good team around him, because the adjustments he makes like every fight was so different because of the adjustments he made.
Well, and on the fly too. And on the fly. Like, I mean, there were times where Davison Fierro would come at him with that pressure that we know Fierro has and the knockout ability that he has. And Figueiredo could never get to him again because Brandon Moreno's corner, and I'll agree with you, his coaches are phenomenal. Like, you can hear them shouting, be like, switch, or like, drop, like obviously dropping his hands. And if you watch Brandon Moreno, it's very like this. Like, that's how he blocks. It's very stationary. He doesn't take a ton of damage, and he's very smart. So, again, I think I agree with you. The UFC has a superstar on their hands with this kid. People like him. He's a Lego guy. He's just like, he's doing UFC in bed. He's like making Lego houses and shit. I'm like, yeah, listen, this is an everyday guy who's really good at doing something, and he wants people to understand that you can do anything you put your mind to, no matter what anybody tells you, because he's a nerd. Like, he's literally a nerd outside of the octagon. He's a comic book guy. He's just like, he's Sheldon. but can beat your ass. Like it's just, it's a very respectable guy, a very reputable guy. And I think, again, I agree with you fully. He is going to be a name for this division for quite some time. So UFC 290 going to be taking place. Today, the hammer got dropped on a ton of dudes. So we're going to get into that right now. PFL, man. Oh, not a good look. Suspensions and fines announced today. We'll kind of start from the bottom. Some of these names that you might not know. Daniel Torres tested positive for amphetamines. He's suspended until January 1st, 2024. He was fined $2,500 with $326 in prosecution fees. So basically, he's got to pay the government. Will Fleury tested positive for elevated testosterone pills. He's out till January 1st, 2024. He was fined $2,250 with $300 in prosecution fines and $495 for testing fees. Cesar Fiera also tested positive. He's suspended till January 14th of 2024. His fine, $3,000, $489 in prosecution fees. There's just a list of guys. Mohamed Fakhreddin, he was suspended for having steroids in the system. He's suspended until April 1st. His fine, $6,000, $407 in prosecution fees. Thiago Santos. Now, I know I've listed some names, but Thiago Santos, most noticeably, obviously the guy or wrecking guy who damn near beat John Jones, tested positive for a steroid. He is suspended until October 1st of 2023, so a reduced sentence, but his fine is outstanding. It's so much money. $12,500 is what he got hit with a fine. He owes $407 in prosecution fees. And then, of course, the other big one that got hit today was Rob Wilkinson. He tested positive for testosterone pills as well. He's suspended till January 1st of 2024, fined $7,500, $326 of prosecution fees, and $495 for testing fees in his victory over, get this, Thiago Santos. Both dudes were gilled, and they both got caught in their last fight. That is insane to me. Cole, is PFL in fucking trouble here with already this amount of guys?
Yeah, that's so stupid. I don't know. Like, what are they gonna do? Like, that's so ridiculous.
It's insane to me to think that Thiago Santos, who was clean in the UFC, because they're testing with USADA, which we'll get into, is pretty insane.
Like, what makes that happen? You know, like, how does that happen? How is there something happened? You know, like there's no there's not that many people that are that dumb in one moment. So it's like, is the communication not there? Are some people saying steroids are fine and some people aren't? Or like, I can't even comprehend what happened.
It's mind-boggling. I'm absolutely mind-boggling, because you think about it, both these guys that were at the main event both got suspended, and they're both beating the piss out of each other on being on TRT. Like, that's insane to me. Is that, like, not only did you just fight that guy, you also now have no contest for both guys because you both tested positive in the same freaking fight. Like, that's insane to me. I agree with you. I'm not sure what PFL is going to do from here, but obviously they've got a problem. It's not one fighter where he gets popped like the UFC, the occasional time. Let's not forget, remember when Chael Sonnen popped hot and people went off on him about being on TRT and hormonal pills. But I mean, dude, this is a severe issue. It's not one, it's not two, it's 7 fucking people. And again, the purses, man, we're talking $7,500 for a guy like Rob Wilkinson, who doesn't really, you probably could use $7,500. Thiago Santos, $12,000. Like, these aren't small increments that were handed out today, and well done by the commission. This is what needs to happen. If you want to cheat, don't be in the sport. And that's what they did today. They nailed down, they said, listen, there's going to be none of this, no matter the organization. You know, I've heard for years people talk about Bellator. Congratulations, Bellator's with USADA as well. They're in the same testing pool. So it doesn't matter, man. Like, say what you will. If you thought you could go to another organization and cheat your way into a victory, you're a bonehead. You're an absolute bonehead. And this, for me, for Thiago Santos, is boneheaded. It's your first fight with a brand new organization and you pissed hot. Like, that looks so bad. So bad. Because they also probably, I'm not going to lie to you, PFL handed him the bag. They give him $500,000. Like, at what point do you wake up? You know, like, and at this point for Thiago Santos, dude, at the end of the day, somebody gave you a second chance because you didn't cut it in the UFC. Something was up where he was just not him anymore, right? Like, we can both agree to that. He wasn't the caliber of that John Jones fight after that loss. He was never the same guy, including getting choked out by Glover Teixeira, right? Like, he was never the same guy. But somebody gives you a second chance, and this goes to anybody that's watching this podcast. If somebody gives you a second chance, don't fuck that up, because clearly this commission understands what's going on. They just slapped you with a $12,000 fine, and now what does PFL do? Because they're tied to this guy for the next 2 years, and now he's suspended for the better part of the rest of the year.
And I wonder if it's going to have some effect on this Bellator deal too. Because they got to be losing money now because of this.
It has to.
And like, so what? And like, who knows what Bellator, like, was it a merge or were they selling? Either way, if they are going to lose money because of this, they're not going to have money to buy it. And Bellator is not going to want to merge if all their guys are on steroids. So it's kind of a weird situation there too.
You kind of fumbled the organization's bag a little bit too. You know, like, not only did you fumble your own purse and you lost your own money, but you're also, like you just alluded to, you're kind of playing with house money and you're kind of going to lose it here. You've got a deal in the works that if it does happen, again, these are all just rumors. Scott Coker even said that, like, hey, we've been talking to PFL. Maybe something happens. Maybe something doesn't, right? We're not in bed with them. Essentially, it's what Scott Coker was saying in a roundabout way, without saying, hey, if they propose a deal, we're probably going to jump on because we're losing a ton of money. Bellator's not making money. They're losing their shirt right now. And so I hope for them that PFL, if I'm a fighter and I'm a Bellator fighter and I'm about to make my way and I sign with an organization of PFL, or even if we merge and we're a major company, right? I'm fucking scared shitless because I'm going to have to fight guys who are juiced. We just talked about two guys who fought each other that were both on the juice. Like, I don't want to risk my well-being. I don't want to risk my career. I don't want to lose what I've worked so hard to get to, you know? Just because I couldn't crack it, we talked about it. Just because I couldn't crack it in the UFC doesn't mean I can't crack it in Bellator, because there's people that are. And if you tell me that I have to go face guys that are on steroids, it's not just, like I said, it's not just one guy. It's 7 people. It's insane to me. There's no discipline there. So I really do hope that PFL can shed this image today, because this is a bad look for this. Not even just them. It's a bad look for the sport. So, yeah. I'm not going to go into it too much more than we already have. Altogether, $400,000 in fines. Pretty insane. All right. This weekend, speaking of PFL, we got the most interesting matchup and look that we've been dying for. Us heavyweight fans have been waiting for this. John Jones in the corner, doing some corner work at PFL this past weekend, wearing a PFL shirt. Everybody was losing their minds online about it. They're like, oh, is he switching companies? Like, take a goddamn chill pill. He's a coach. It's what he does when he's not in the octagon. So him and our boy, Francis Ngannou, eye up each other. Francis being a little chummy, gives him a little, like, you know, tap on the shoulder and says, hey, good to see ya. And John Jones says, when do you want it? Like, in the most subtle way, because you can see that he was like, hey, hi, reading lips, you know, like, how you doing? And then he's like, you can see him say it. When do you want it? Francis Ngannou's a little bitch. And I mean this in the nicest way possible. He went running scared because he knew John Jones, or even Stipe for that fact, were going to come back, right? Instead, he said, I'm not going to fight for a year. I'm going to, you know, and good for him for dictating what he did for fighters' rights. I'm not upset about that. I'm glad that fighters that are going to face him are going to get $2 million a payday. It's pretty good goddamn money, especially if you're a PFL heavyweight, you know, like, I mean, I might go fight in PFL and gain 30 pounds that I've already lost, put it back on, and I'll go fight in the heavyweight division, because hell, why not? But at the same time, it's like these two, this is the matchup we all want, right? This is the matchup that we all have been asking for ever since John Jones announced that he was going to be moving up to heavyweight. Francis and John, that has been the matchup. These two finally come to a head. John Jones asked a simple question, when do you want it? And literally Francis just stood scared. I couldn't believe how much his body language changed from the tap on the shoulder, like the how you doing, to immediately seizing. If this matchup happens, do we get the super card, right? Do we get the PFL versus UFC? Do you think that's something that might happen? Like, I'm just throwing this out there.
I think it's unlikely. I don't think Dana's about it.
No.
And Dana's not interested in helping Ngannou at all now. Their relationship is over. So I don't see how it would happen. Ngannou would have to come back to the UFC. Jones isn't leaving the UFC. He's staying there till he retires. He's not gonna leave. So the only way would be for Francis to come back, and that's probably unlikely. And just like you said, Francis is being a little bitch. You know, he left when he knew what fight was gonna happen. He knew he was gonna fight John Jones, and it was gonna be the biggest fight maybe of all time. You know, like pay-per-view numbers.
Oh, it would shatter. It would
Right.
shatter.
So he left knowing that. So he's trying to act like a student in the PF, and he knows when he says that that's not going to happen. I think like, what was the quote John Jones said? Like Francis said, like, cross the street and come fight over here. And John Jones said, it doesn't matter because if I cross the street, you're just gonna cross the other side again, like you did last time. And it's the truth. That's exactly what happened. But I think Jones has some good fights in the UFC anyways. So he gets another 2-3 wins, he's gonna retire happy. And Francis can be a part of that, and it's really up to him.
This fight was never going to happen the day that Francis announced that he signed with PFL. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Just like, can you imagine being guaranteed $8 million no matter what happens when you fight? Like, he gets 8, his opponent gets 2. They get fighters' rights. They get all these sponsors. They get all this other stuff. And that's what Francis was fighting for in the UFC. And I get it. I get what he was looking for. The long-term health care of fighters after it's all said and done. I get it. It's scary. We talked about CTE. It's very scary. But at the same time, you don't get to dictate that, bro. You are just a fighter. And it's cool, and I get it. I understand what you're trying to do, and PFL is bending backwards for him, and they're probably going to lose their shirt in the financial aspect of things with Francis Ngannou because they're going to feed him tin cans. No one's interested in those matchups. And exactly what you alluded to, John Jones is the best to ever do this, period. Period. They're the only, and we said it a million times, I'll say it till the day I die, the only person who can beat John Jones is John Jones.
Yeah.
You know, and we've seen it with the failures he's had in his life. But at the end of the day, dude, if Francis and honestly John Jones ever got into the octagon, it's so one-sided. It's like, it's not even close. If Francis decided that he wanted to wrestle with him, he's screwed. If you wanted to stand up with him, too slow. Like, yeah, Francis got some bombs, and obviously that Overeem knockout will always be his highlight of one of the fastest uppercuts I've ever seen. But it's also an out of his prime Overeem, right? Like, you beat a guy who's been knocked out a bunch. Like, congratulations. You fight John Jones, it's a different animal, man. He's got every weapon in his arsenal to beat you. And we saw it on display in his heavyweight win. So, I mean, I loved the matchup. I loved the look down. I love what was being said in it. But at the end of the day, this fight, guys, as much as we talk about it, will they scrap it out? The answer is no, because there's no way. John Jones is signed for another 8 fights in the UFC, 7, after his last fight. And Francis Ngannou is making $8 million a fight. It's never going to happen unless both of them retire and then box on Showtime. Probably what's going to happen. So I
think Francis's first fight in the PFL, if he's making $8 million and his opponent's making 2, PFL is going to be in debt, and they're going to be like, well, that was a big mistake. Now you're jobless again because we're folding.
Yeah. Well,
and like you said, no one's going to tune into that.
No, like, and I mean, and it's not a shot to the PFL heavyweights at all. It's just nobody's on the caliber of what Francis Ngannou is in that organization. And rightfully so. I mean, hey, if you knew that you could take the easy route and in boxing, right? If you're a 205 and you know that you're the best 205er in the world and you can dictate what you want to make, then hell yeah, so be it. But at the end of the day, I just think this is one of those cases where Jones and Ngannou, it's just never going to happen because there's just too many indifferences in that. With that being said, let's get into our last topic. We're kind of wrapping down here, but this is the big one that we wanted to talk about because today it came in that Conor McGregor, yes, Mystic Mac himself, failed to enter the USADA pool, which means in 2023 we will not be seeing Conor McGregor, which puts his whole fight with Michael Chandler on hold. I'll throw it to you. I've got some opinions. I want to hear yours first.
My opinion is that he's not the same person. He clearly does not care about fighting. He just lost it. You know, he's got the money, he's got the fame. He doesn't need to fight anymore. He knows it. He's clearly jacked out of his mind. So I mean, I don't think he has any interest in fighting, or else he'd be fighting.
Yeah, Conor McGregor's on steroids, people. And if you don't think so, come at me, because I'll take all your comments in the comment section, because I could show you a million reasons as to why he is. First and foremost, the back acne that he has in recent training videos. That's a pretty good indicator. Oh, maybe because the fact that it looks like he ate himself ever since his last fight. His face is swollen as hell. Listen, I think he's got bigger problems and bigger fish to fry than this whole thing. A week ago at a Heat game, he punched a mascot. This mascot now has some had to go to the hospital for some damages, which is crazy to me. I mean, I watched a replay and I was like, maybe he was just joking, but I think Conor teed off on the mascot a little harder than most people would have.
Yeah, I think it was planned, but it wasn't planned for him to throw a haymaker.
I mean, he hit him with an absolute bomb. And secondly, and this is the other part of this, which is not good. There's some video footage that's been rolling around of Conor McGregor and an unknown woman that's definitely not his wife floating around on the internet. And it was kind of back in a bathroom area. And this woman has come forward saying that she was basically raped for all essential purposes. And now Conor is going to be in court. Again, this is where fame and celebrity kick in. You are not, just because a rich millionaire man, above the crowd, above the world, above the law. You know what I mean? And I think at this point, Conor McGregor is a shell of himself. Even when you've been watching The Ultimate Fighter, which I have been, and I'm sure you have been as well, it just seems like Michael Chandler is a fighter. Right? That's a guy who wants to do this. He wants to beat the shit out of Conor. He wants this fight more than anything because he knows that if he beats Conor, he probably has one more title shot, right? Like, he's going to get one last hurrah because he beat the biggest name in the sport. And I don't blame him. And he's taking that approach. Meanwhile, you got Conor over here who's 0-3. I don't know what's this week. We're going to gear up and watch that one. But he's 0-3 as a coach so far. And it's just like, for me, he doesn't give a shit about the sport. He came out with that Netflix special that kind of documented all the stuff that he went through after the Poirier fight, and it was great stuff. I mean, it was fun for Netflix. I'm sure he made a ton of money off of that as well. It just seemed like it was a hype video for him to go into this next fight, and it absolutely failed. It was a terrible, terrible performance, and some bad things to see in regards to Conor McGregor. Yes, he is, and people don't want to say this, Conor McGregor is 1,000% on steroids, guys. Come at me all you want. I mean, at the end of the day, the reason why he didn't enter USADA pool is because he knows that in 6 months, you have to test clean consistently for 6 months. Bro, he's doing like whiskey trips. You can't tell me that guy's not on cocaine at least 3 times a month. And he's just going to fail that drug test too. So if I am Conor and maybe I do want to fight in 2024, I know that the next 6 months I have to dedicate to getting clean. You know, like I have to dedicate not drinking. I have to dedicate not doing drugs. I have to dedicate not doing steroids. And all those people are like, oh, he's not on steroids. Grow up. Enough. Conor didn't enter that pool because he knew he would fail. So at the end of the day, I don't think the matchup with Chandler is going to happen, which is really, really unfortunate. I am a big Michael Chandler fan. Who do we give Chandler to now? Like, he was about to face the biggest name in the company and get the bag, really. I mean, he was about to make probably the biggest payday of his career. And now he's got to sit back and wonder what's next. Like, who do you give him? Like, do you give him a title fight because he's been so patient?
Give him Dariush.
I like that matchup. I love that matchup, actually. 2 guys who could, want to stay relevant. I like that matchup a ton. I can't see Dariush being out a very long time either.
No.
I just think for Chandler, this has to suck. Like,
Yeah, definitely. That's the matchup everyone wants. That's like you pretty much get somebody who's gonna advertise the fight for you. You don't have to do anything, and it's gonna get hyped up. You just got to show up, and you're gonna make a ton more money than you usually do.
yeah, I think for him too, you could see how excited he was because all these television appearances, like, you know, he was on ESPN's First Take, and he was talking about how excited he is, and everybody's like, well, Connor's not here, and he's like, well, I'm me. I'm Michael Chandler. I'm a former champion myself. Like, give me some respect here a little bit. You know, like, I'm not a slouch, guys. I've had some of the biggest names in this division already, and I've only been here for 4 fights. You know, like, I'm a 50-50 fighter right now in this world in the UFC. And then you go on to like Good Morning America, and Michael Chandler's there, and Conor McGregor's not. I agree with you. I didn't want to admit to it initially off the get-go because I thought after watching that Netflix special that there was still some fight left in Conor, and he wanted it. He wanted to pursue it. It's gone. That tank is empty. We can move on, folks. Conor McGregor is not coming back.
And honestly, like you can even, there's probably an argument to say he only did The Ultimate Fighter to hype up this documentary.
True.
Just so like Netflix buys it, he makes a ton of money. Now he doesn't actually have to fight. He just probably made how much more millions. Now he's good for another 10 years, you know?
He also probably got the bag from fucking The Ultimate Fighter too. So let's not fumble what he got paid for probably 6 weeks of production. So again, the guy that I feel bad for all of this, I don't feel bad for Conor McGregor anymore. I have no sympathy for his actions. I have no sympathy for what he's doing. I think he's a trashless, classless human being at this point. And I would never say it because his story is so amazing. Like, you think about early Conor McGregor, you know, that Irish kid that no one gave a shit about, Cage Warriors, became one of the best fighters there, came over to the UFC, absolutely rinsed everybody at 145, and was the double champ. The double champ does whatever the fuck he wants. But he got stuck in that mindset, right? The fame, the fortune, the access. It's now you're seeing it full circle. It's coming down hard. And you know, I just saw that he announced that he's pregnant with Dee again. Like, they're about to have another baby, and I'm just like, this poor woman. Like, if I took anything away from that documentary, that is the best version of a wife in the entire world, bro. Like, this girl was paying your rent because you couldn't afford to do anything but train, right? This girl stuck.
But like, to be fair, now he's paying her rent.
Fair, and I get that, but like, I saw the video of the girl that he apparently had this thing with. She's disgusting. Like, it's that. I'm not trying to be rude. It's just, you know, you see Dee. She is a beautiful woman. Dee Devlin is a gorgeous woman. His wife, if you're wondering who I'm referring to, gorgeous woman. But at the same time, the biggest thing, like I said, the only person who can fail Conor McGregor seems to be Conor McGregor. It's the John Jones thing. Like, this guy has the world by the balls, and no matter what he does, he's going to be successful. Proper Irish whiskey, right? Irish 12 does fantastic. Still a sponsor of the UFC. Still probably makes a bajillion dollars, even though he's not in it anymore. I saw that he just opened up a brand new beer company, so that's probably going to do really, really well for himself. I just think outside of those business ventures, the UFC is kind of the last priority for him. He doesn't need to fight anymore. He's done what he's had to do, right? Like, and we can agree with that. And I think after this Ultimate Fighter season's done, and I don't think we're going to get a matchup announcement, obviously, now for 2023. I know that they were hoping for that year-end card in December, which would make sense timeline-wise from when the show ends to where they'd be fighting, right? I don't think this matchup happens. I feel so bad for Michael Chandler. I hope he gets paid. Hope he gets paid really well for all of this bullshit that he has to go through. I love the Dariush matchup now that you think about it. Two guys that have a lot to prove that are going to stand and bang. It's going to be a ton of fun in that matchup. Shit balls. Talk about two guys who are really good wrestlers who probably aren't going to wrestle, eh? So that's going to wrap it up for us. Again, we want to say thank you to our sponsors. Of course, you guys have been great all year. FKN, RKP Roofing, Rest When Dead, Blue Collar Media, Sandman Boxing System. Of course, if you want to find us and you want to see us, of course, you can scroll at the bottom. We are live and pretty active on most of our socials. Again, we did take a bit of a break here. There's no denying that. Our boy was having a baby. I was busy. with our brand new job. So it's been a whirlwind and crazy, but we're happy to be back. We will always be back. As long as the sport is running, you know that we're going to be here talking about it until we can't and we're old and we're senile and we're making things up. You can find us at the Boomtown Pod on Facebook, Twitter, also on Instagram. You can find us at bluecollarmg.com, streaming all of our latest podcasts, which are available for download always on Spotify, Anchor, and Apple Podcasts. For myself, my co-host, the man, Cole Sandman Smith, of course, of Sandman Boxing System. We hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We will be back more frequently. I promise you it won't be another month. We'll actually probably be back after UFC 290. In the meantime, have yourselves a great evening. And again, thank you for tuning in to the Boomtown Pod, your home for combat sports.